standing in the middle of my brother's wedding reception, 300 guests, a 12-piece band, a 5-tier cake that cost more than my first car, and my sister-in-law's mother had just loudly informed the entire head table that I was, quote, the sad little government worker who still rents. She didn't whisper it. She said it the way people say things when they want everyone to hear but want plausible deniability if you call them out. I smiled. I picked up my sparkling water. I said nothing. That was the version of me my family had always known. The quiet one. The one who showed up, helped clean up, wrote the check when it was needed, and drove home alone at the end of the night. I should back up. My name is Adele. I'm 31 years old. I work for the federal government in a capacity I'm not allowed to describe at dinner parties, which is exactly the problem. And also, eventually, exactly the solution. My brother Wesley is 4 years older than me. He's the one my parents always talked about at Christmas. Wesley got into business school. Wesley bought a house at 28. Wesley proposed to Tiffany in Paris, which our mother recounted to every single person at her church for approximately 11 months. Tiffany is fine. I want to be fair about that. She's not the villain of this story. Her mother, Paulette, is a different category of person entirely. Paulette runs a real estate business in Scottsdale. She wears linen in colors I don't know the names of. She has opinions about everything and delivers them with the confidence of someone who has never once been wrong about anything, at least not in her own recollection. From the moment Wesley got engaged, Paulette decided I was a curiosity. Not a threat, not a peer. A curiosity, the kind of family member you mention, with a slight tilt of the head and a lowered voice. His sister works for the government. Some kind of desk job. Never married. Keeps odd hours. I heard her describe me that way at the engagement party. I was standing 6 feet away. I said nothing. This is the part that people who know me now find hardest to believe. That I used to just absorb things. Let them land. File them somewhere quiet and keep moving. It wasn't weakness exactly. It was training, actually. Though I didn't think of it that way at the time. When you spend years learning to stay calm while everything around you is on fire, the skill bleeds into your personal life whether you want it to or not. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. The wedding was in Sedona. Of course it was. 3 days at a resort that charged $400 a night, which our parents paid for on a payment plan I only found out about later. They didn't ask me to help. That's important to note. They didn't ask. But they also didn't hide the stress. And so I quietly paid for the rehearsal dinner without being asked. Because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done. I paid for Wesley's security deposit when he moved to Phoenix at 24 and was short by $1,800. I paid for my mother's dental work 2 years ago when her insurance lapsed between jobs. I drove 4 hours round trip to help my father move furniture when he threw his back out and didn't tell anyone until it was an emergency. None of this was announced. None of it was tracked. I didn't do it for credit. I did it because I love my family, even when my family treats me like a piece of furniture. Present and functional, never really seen. At the rehearsal dinner, Paulette asked me what I did, specifically. She'd asked before. I give the same answer every time. Federal employment, administrative work, can't discuss specifics due to the nature of the position. She looked at me the way someone looks at a child who's told a clumsy lie. That sounds very mysterious, she said with a smile that meant the opposite. It's really not, I said. It's mostly paperwork. This was technically true. Wesley laughed a little too loudly. My mother changed the subject. My father studied his bread roll. That night in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my phone for a long time. There was a message from my supervisor, not unusual even on a Friday, and a briefing document I needed to review before Monday. I closed both. Put the phone face down, looked at the feeling. I thought, I am 31 years old. I have a federal security clearance that the average person doesn't know exists. I have been in rooms that don't appear on any public record. I have made decisions as part of a team that affected outcomes I am not permitted to describe. And I am here, in a resort hotel in Sedona, being smiled at like a curiosity. The wedding itself was beautiful. I'll give Paulette that. She has taste, and she deployed it ruthlessly. Flowers everywhere. String lights over the outdoor ceremony. Wesley cried when he saw Tiffany come down the aisle, which I did not expect, and which made me cry a little too, quietly. quietly, in the third row where I was seated with some of Wesley's college friends and their spouses. The reception was where things unraveled. We were at the head table, family only, 8 of us, and Paulette was holding court. She'd had 2 glasses of champagne and was explaining to the table at large how Tiffany had always been destined for something significant, how she'd known when Tiffany was small that she would find someone worthy. She looked at Wesley when she said Wesley, and then, just briefly, she looked at me. It wasn't what she said next that got me. It was the order of events. She told a story about Tiffany's first boyfriend, who'd been pre-med, and how that hadn't worked out, and then, with no visible transition, she said, gesturing vaguely in my direction, "It's so nice that Wesley has a sibling who's still close to home, even if the career never quite materialized." The table went quiet for exactly 1 second. My mother looked down. My father cleared his throat. Wesley said "Mom" to Paulette, which Paulette ignored entirely. I felt something in my chest that I'd felt before, in very different circumstances. A kind of cold settling, like the moment before a briefing when you understand what you're actually walking into. I said calmly, "It's materialized just fine, thank you." Paulette smiled. "Of course it has, sweetheart." "Sweetheart, I am 31 years old. I have a federal." I picked up my champagne glass, put it back down without drinking from it. Across the table, Tiffany's older brother, Beau, who I'd met twice before and found perfectly tolerable, was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. He worked in finance. Private equity, I think. He had the handshake of someone who'd been taught that handshakes matter. Later I would be glad he was watching. But in that moment, it just made me feel like a specimen. The band started up again. People moved to the dance floor. I excused myself and went to find the bar, which was outside near the terrace, and stood there for a moment in the warm Sedona air looking at the red rocks in the distance, barely visible in the dark. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. Work contact. Not my supervisor. Hire. I stared at the name on the screen for a moment. I had 3 hours of personal leave left before I needed to be reachable again. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Saturday. I was wearing a bridesmaid dress the color of dusty rose. I answered. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. I won't tell you what was said because I genuinely cannot. What I can tell you is that by the time I hung up, 2 things had happened. First, my plans for Sunday had changed significantly. And second, the deputy director of a federal agency had addressed me by my last name, which he only does when something is actually urgent. I stood there for another moment. Finished my drink. Went back inside. Paulette was telling a story at the table. Something about property values. My mother was nodding along with the focused attention of someone who has decided to survive an evening by becoming very interested in whatever is being said. I sat down. Beau, from across the table, leaned slightly forward. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. "Work." He looked at me the way people look at you when they know you've just said less than the full truth, but they're not going to push it. "On a Saturday?" he said. "Yeah," I said. He nodded slowly, like this meant something to him, and went back to his drink. Paulette had moved on to the topic of my brother's career prospects and how she hoped Tiffany would be able to cut back her hours once children entered the picture. I sat quietly and thought about the phone call. Thought about Sunday. Thought about the way my name had sounded in the deputy director's voice. Then Paulette said, still not looking directly at me, "Adele, you must be so happy for your brother. It's lovely when someone in the family really finds their footing, isn't it?" I looked at her, the cold, settling feeling again. "I'm very happy for him," I said. "And for Tiffany." "Of course," she said. "And maybe someday," she smiled again, the same smile, "you'll find your footing too." My mother made a small sound, not quite a protest, just a small sound of a person who is not going to say what they're thinking. Wesley was across the room talking to his college roommate. He didn't hear it. I breathed in through my nose, out slowly, and I said very quietly, "I think I'm okay in that department, actually." Paulette tilted her head, smiled wider. "Sweetheart," she said, "there's no shame in taking a little longer than everyone else. We can't all be on the same timeline." It was the second time she'd called me sweetheart, And something about the second time, the exact same tone, the exact same angle of her head, like she pulled it from a shelf, made something in me go very, very still. I opened my mouth. And then my phone buzzed again. And then it buzzed again. 3 rapid messages from the same contact, a name most people wouldn't recognize. I would bet money Paulette had never heard it in her life. I would bet a significant amount of money. I looked at the screen. I excused myself. I went back to the terrace and made another call, this one to a number that isn't in my contacts list because it doesn't need to be. I know it the same way I know my own address. The way you know things that have been important long enough. The way you know things that have been important long enough. The call lasted 11 minutes. When I came back in, the band was playing something slow, and Wesley and Tiffany were on the dance floor, and for a moment I just stood in the doorway and watched my brother dance with his wife, and tried to hold on to the fact that this was a good night, that something real and good had happened tonight, regardless of the surrounding noise. Bo materialized at my elbow. He had a quiet way of moving for someone his size. "You've been outside twice," he said. "I'm aware," I said. "Same phone number." I looked at him. "Why?" He shrugged. "Just noticed you looked at it the same way both times. Like it was something you expected but were still deciding how to feel about." I didn't say anything for a moment. "Your mother," I said finally, "called me sweetheart twice tonight." "I know," he said. "I heard." "She does that a lot? To people she's decided aren't worth full sentences?" "Yes." I looked at him again. He was looking at the dance floor. "I should probably be offended on your behalf," he said. "Except I get the feeling you're handling it." "I'm handling it," I said. "What is it that you actually do?" he asked. And I'm not asking to be polite. I'm asking because something about the way you answer that phone is familiar to me. And I spent 6 years in naval intelligence before I went private sector. So I have some reference points. I looked at him for a long moment. "I work for the federal government," I said. "Right," he said. "In an administrative capacity." "Sure," he said. We stood there. "The deputy director called me tonight," I said, which was not classified, just context. "We have something developing." He nodded. Said nothing else. "Your mother," I said, "thinks I never found my footing." "My mother," he said, "thinks a lot of things." We went back to the table. Paulette was now deep in conversation with one of Tiffany's aunts about a renovation she was planning for her Scottsdale property. My parents were talking quietly with each other. The cake had been cut. The evening was winding toward its natural conclusion. Beau's phone buzzed. He looked at it and something changed in his face. Not dramatically, just a small recalibration. The thing that happens when someone who's used to receiving serious information receives serious information. "Huh," he said. "What?" I said. He turned his phone to show me. It was a news alert, a name I recognized, a situation I had been briefed on, in part 90 minutes ago. I kept my face very still. "You know about this," he said quietly. "I can't confirm or deny anything about any ongoing situation," I said, equally quietly. He looked at me. And then something happened that I was not prepared for, which is that he laughed, quietly, not unkindly, and said, "How long have you been doing this?" 7 years, I said. He shook his head slowly. "And your family thinks, government desk job, yes. Do they know any? No." He was quiet for a moment. "That must be," he started, and then stopped. "It's fine," I said. "Most of the time it's fine. But tonight your mother called you sweetheart twice." "In front of witnesses," I said. He smiled at that, a real one, not the social kind. At that exact moment, Paulette finished her story, looked around the table with satisfaction, and her gaze landed on us. On me, specifically. The slight tilt. The curious expression. "You two getting along?" she asked, with a tone that suggested this would be charming if unexpected. "Very well," Beau said. "Adele was telling me about her work," he added. Paulette's expression shifted slightly. "Not much. Just a small rearrangement of features that said this is not a topic I take seriously without having to say it." "Oh, that's sweet," she said. "The government work." "She can't talk about most of it," Beau said pleasantly. "Of course," Paulette said with a smile. "Of course," Paulette said with a smile. Because of the clearance level, Bo said, still pleasant, still conversational, as if he was discussing the weather or the appetizers. You know how that goes. Paulette's smile stayed in place, but something behind it moved. Clearance, she said. Federal, I said. Not elaborating. Not needing to. Like a background check type of thing, she said. A bit more involved than that, Bo said. My mother, who had been half listening, looked up. My father set down his fork. Paulette looked between the two of us, and I watched her recalibrate. The slight narrowing, the reassessment. She was a sharp woman. Sharp enough to know that something had shifted, even if she couldn't name what. I didn't realize, she said to me, that your position was administrative, I said. Mostly paperwork. A pause. With a clearance that doesn't come up in conversation. Wesley had come back to the table. He caught the tail end of this and looked between us with the expression of someone arriving late to a movie and trying to piece together the plot. What did I miss? He said. Nothing, I said. Adele was just telling us a little more about her job, Paulette said. Her voice had changed. Not dramatically. Just calibrated differently, the way a room changes when you open a window. Oh, Wesley said carefully. My mother was watching me. I don't know what she saw in my face, but something there made her sit up slightly straighter. I didn't explain. I didn't list credentials. I didn't say anything that wasn't already on the public record, which is to say I said almost nothing. But I said the almost nothing in a way that was different from every other almost nothing I'd offered over the years. With my shoulders straight, without the apologetic half-smile I'd worn like a uniform since childhood. Without qualifying, hedging, minimizing, Paulette said after a moment, well, that's impressive. Not sweetheart. Not the government work. Just, that's impressive. Thank you, I said. The table moved on. The band played. The night continued. Later, after the cake, after the bouquet toss, after Wesley and Tiffany left in a car with ribbons tied to the door handles, I found my mother standing near the exit of the ballroom with her small clutch purse and the look she gets when she's processing something. Why didn't you ever say anything, she asked. About what? About what you actually. She stopped. Started again. I didn't know. That it was. You never asked, I said. Not unkindly, just accurately. She was quiet. Mom, I said. I've been okay. I've always been okay. I've always been okay. I don't need anyone to see it to make it true. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes went a little bright. I know you've been okay, she said. I just... She reached out and touched my arm. I should have asked. Yeah, I said. You should have. We stood there for a moment. The last of the wedding guests moved around us toward the exit. Somewhere behind us, Paulette was giving instructions to a resort staff member about the floral arrangements, whether they could be packed for transport, who to contact in the morning. My phone buzzed one more time. I looked at it. A confirmation. Sunday earlier than I'd expected. I have to leave first thing tomorrow, I told my mother. She nodded. I figured. I'll call when I can. I know, she said. And then, I'm proud of you. It was simple. Completely plain. No orchestration. No audience. No moment of public revelation to make it land correctly. Just my mother in a hotel ballroom doorway, finally saying the thing. Thank you, I said, and meant it. I drove back to the hotel in the dark. The Sedona rock formations invisible now against the night sky, but present nonetheless. Those enormous, solid, ancient things that didn't need you to see them to be exactly what they were. I packed my bag, set my alarm, laid out the clothes I'd need in the morning. Before I fell asleep, I thought about Paulette's face in that moment of recalibration. The specific shift of someone who has been very confident about a wrong thing and has just, quietly, been shown the door. I didn't feel triumphant exactly. That's not quite the right word. I felt like myself. Fully and without apology for the first time all weekend. That felt like enough. More than enough, honestly. It was enough.